And we are live, Mayor. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Is this on?
It's on.
I guess this is the update. That's unusual. It's too bad. I gotta tell you about it. I get children, but they left this morning. We had a good visit. Oh, yeah. We. Great. Drove 3 days down. To know they're driving back to the north right. Right. Well, it's a little early, 2 minutes early. Judge Eckley will speak, but everybody's here. Judge Eckley, do you want to say something? Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me come to your council meeting. I'm Judge Audra Eckerly. I'm a Jefferson Circuit Court judge now. I handle the felony cases, robbery, rape, carjackings that we have in our community, murder cases. I also handle big civil cases where there's a lot of money at stake, like medical malpractice, car accidents. Before that, before being a circuit judge, I was a district court judge and handled misdemeanor, smaller cases, as well as smaller civil cases. And both times I've been elected by my colleagues to be chief judge. And that shows you hopefully what they think about my qualifications. Before that, I practiced law for 12 years. And I served as general counsel for Atria Assisted Living that spun off of Vencore, and I was also a prosecutor for a while. So now there's a vacancy this November on the Court of Appeals. The judge there is not running. It's the next level up, and 90% of what they do is review the circuit court, where I've been since 2007. I've had thousands of trials and rulings, so I have the requisite experience. I didn't have a primary in May, but I will be on your ballot in November. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Any
Judge.
questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, now we'll call the meeting to order. This is the regular monthly meeting of the Prospect City Council, and today is June 20th, 2022. And the first order of business is to seek approval of the minutes of the last regular council meeting, which was on May 16th. And those have already been distributed to all council members. And are there any suggested additions or corrections? And hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Not. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All ayes. Those minutes are approved. Next on the agenda, it says mayor's report, but the first thing under it, before the mayor's update, is a letter of resignation from Sarah Odell, Councilmember Sarah Odell. Everybody here has that letter, everybody on the council. Sarah's husband received a big promotion, and it involved moving the family to Germany. And by now they are in Germany. My reading of the legal handbook is that since her resignation is dated today, that it goes over to the next council meeting, but on advice of council, he says the council can go ahead and propose a successor, a replacement, as early as tonight. Am I right about that, Chris?
Yes, that's the way I read it.
All right. So whenever the council would like to proceed with that, we can insert it into the agenda.
I guess we ought to also say you have 30 days to fill it. So
Yeah,
you can do whatever you want in regards, as long as you do it within 30 days.
so you can either do it tonight or you can do it at the next meeting.
Actually, what we have always done in the past is if we had had an election and somebody came out, there are 6 of us on the council. If somebody had come out number 7, we would pretty much automatically make them appointed. If there was nobody like that, which right now we don't have, we would ask people from the community if they would give us brief resumes so that we could take a look at not only their background, but what have they done for Prospect before? And we'd make our decision based on that. Since we now have 12 people running for the city council in the November election, I think it would be fair for us to ask those 12 people if they'd like to be considered. And if they would, if they'd give us a brief resume so that we could select from that group.
I kind of like that idea. So Chris, first of all, I want to go back to you. So Sarah's resignation is effective as of right now at this meeting.
That's
So we
correct.
have 30 days.
That's correct.
But I'm kind of thinking of a lot of the candidates that are running, I don't frankly know. And so I think to Sandra's point, I like the fairness of giving them a chance to submit their resumes to us for consideration. That way we at least have that information to review since we have 30 days anyway. And then take that time to give everybody a chance to sort of compete and let us know their qualifications and then give us a chance to get a little smarter on who's out there.
So what do we have to do to implement that? Is a motion that we wait, that we place a 2-week deadline on submission of letters?
Not letters, but something reviewing their
And that'd
background
be a letter,
and
an
what
email,
they've done for the city.
a submission to the city, John Carter probably,
Would that
Sure.
be John?
within 2 weeks. And as we receive them, that you would distribute them to all of us. And then that would give us 2 weeks to,
Yeah, and if for
cogitate.
whatever reason we felt we needed a special meeting, we could call one.
Yeah,
Yeah, luckily your next meeting is July the 18th.
I know, I took a look at that.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
we
So
do have time.
You can do it at the next regular meeting. You don't have
okay.
to.
Is that a reasonable approach to, it's consistent with, what we've done in prior years?
Is that, John, are you okay with doing that? John, you okay?
No,
with that?
absolutely.
Is that okay?
So-
And then,
I have to write them a letter here shortly because they're going to need to fill out the ethics disclosure form. So I can include as part of that letter a request for their.
Well, but that takes time, and if you're gonna mail it, I think we need to communicate with them faster than that. If we're gonna give them 2 weeks, I'd like it to be 2 weeks from tomorrow. You
I mean,
don't
I'd be
have,
happy to call them, but I don't have their numbers.
all of their phone numbers, I think, are in the data registration thing.
Okay.
Okay.
And it shouldn't be exclusively to the candidates. I mean, in the past, we've had the
Yeah,
public
but
at
we've never,
large.
we've never had 12 run. I think that that's a rational
Yeah.
number.
Whatever.
If nobody wants it, I think we could broaden the search, but I think that starting with 12 is sufficient.
Yeah, I guess so.
And then the other part of that is the 12 have already indicated an interest, whereas people outside that haven't yet. So I don't think that it's
Yeah.
unfair to limit it to 12.
Well, not to put too fine point on it, but there's only 8.
There's only what?
There's only 8.
Oh, because you,
Or,
no,
There's
yeah,
only 7 because 5 of us
Exactly.
up here, aren't eligible.
3 of you.
No,
Barnsley and I are running for mayor.
I know, but you can't do anything about applying for the vacancy,
Right.
nor can John. So it's down to 7, but that's
No, I hear
neither
you.
here nor there.
You can tell he's an engineer and good at math.
Yeah.
So
So,
have you guys decided what you want to do?
yeah, is a motion,
I don't think you need a motion. I think we'll just
Okay, I
get the
think-
word out to.
yeah, are we
candidates.
all in agreement? I don't know, Don, if you haven't said it. Sounds good. Okay,
If you want, I could put it out in e-blast.
I think that's a.
I think that's a good idea, but I think that some of these people may not be on an e-blast.
Well, that's the best we can do.
Yeah, it is. So they would be due, they'd be due July 4th. No, let's make it the 5th. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving along, mayor's update on city matters. I thought it would be appropriate, since our fiscal year ends in 10 days, June 30th, to reflect on the fiscal year gone by and what this council basically has accomplished. I've made a list. First, our police have gotten new radios and new firearm equipment. Second, we've completed the US 42 safety study, and that involved an appropriation from this council for our 20% match. We've also met with the Kentucky Highway folks more than once, including just today, about the next step, which is the design phase of the US 42 project. And that meeting included funding options and possible KIPTA involvement, which is likely. Third, we have acquired 3 acres of land for a future maintenance building. We've started the legal process necessary to accomplish that. Fourth, we have repaved all of Fox Harbor Road, Gunpowder Lane, Westover Drive, and Fairway View Court. Fifth, we've begun the development of the Little Hunting Creek Park, including the playground, walkways, expanding the parking lot, and a pavilion for public events. All of these things have really depended upon the city council vote. 6, the Parks Committee has continued trail maintenance, trail repair, invasive removal, has built a concrete path to the canoe launch, and completed the study of alternative proposals for Putney Pond. 7th, the Forestation Board has planted, I believe, 28 new trees, which they're now all over me about getting them watered. Makes me wonder what happens to trees that aren't planted by the Forestation Board, but I guess they have to stand on their own. The Forestation Board has also accomplished the removal of a number of dead or dangerous trees. 8th, our library continues to serve our residents. It's very popular, with the help of numerous volunteers and the ladies from the front desk. 9th, we have completed a survey of our residents' preferences on the use of the ARPA money. 10th, we have maintained everyday services, including trash collection, landscaping, snow and ice removal. 11th, and finally, we have resumed our traditional 4th of July celebration with a parade, children's features, a band concert, and a huge fireworks show. And all of this is due to city council authorizing and budgeting for these things to happen. So I thought I should tell you that. I think we have a good record for this past fiscal year. On another subject, deadline to file for running for mayor of city council in November's election closed earlier this month, and on June the 9th, the election officials held the drawings to determine ballot positions. The result of those events is as follows. On the ballot for mayor of Prospect, the ballot will be number 1, Doug Farnsley, and number 2, Sandra Leonard. So one or the other of those two people will be your next mayor come January 1st. On the ballot for city council, 12 residents filed to run for these 6 seats. One of those 12, Sally Schneider, is expected to withdraw due to her being the sister of John Carter, our city clerk, and due to our nepotism ordinance, which doesn't allow that. Of the remaining 11, based on the drawing for ballot positions, the ballot is expected to show number 1, Don Grader, number 2, Sarah Hines, number 3, Eric Rader, number 4, David Holmes, number 5, Richard Avery, number 6, yours truly, number 7, Dale Dodville, number 8, Howard Harding, number 9, Don Gibson, number 10, Greg Hulsman, number 11, Frank Fulcher. This is the biggest field for city council that I can remember ever. And finally, subject as to the LDG proposed apartment developments, Prospect Cove and the Viridian, I have nothing new to report. I will say that LDG's lawyer is continuing to take the depositions of me. I've already had 2 days and I've got to go back for a 3rd day. Lucky me. And of the council members who were on the council on 2016 and 2017. And I will say that the legal expenses of this are very substantial. That's the mayor's update on current matters. Any questions? Not? We'll get the commission and board reports, starting with the ethics board. John Embry. Is John here? Oh, John?
Yeah, hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is an election year. John Carter mentioned sending out ethics forms. And for all of those new candidates, the existing council members don't need to do this, but for all of the new candidates for city council, they are required by Prospect Ordinance in Chapter 38 to fill out and return an ethics, what we call an ethics form, or it's basically a financial disclosure form. It is required also by, but it may be obtained from city council. And I think I heard John Carter say a minute ago that it's going to be mailed out. For those who have to fill one out, it is not as complicated as it looks like. It's a lot of paper. I'm going to say, please read the instructions carefully. We need things like earned household income if it exceeds $10,000. That's not just for candidates. It also requires that, gotta check my cheat sheet over here. It does not include things like retirement, pensions, or that type of income. Social Security is not included in that. It is principally earned income. Any close relatives residing in Prospect, employed in Prospect, should also be included, listed as being a part of that if their income is significant. If you've got questions, City Hall can put you in touch with me or one of the other 2 members of the Ethics Commission, and we can have a discussion about it. Beyond that, that's about all I've got to say. And I'll hand it back, Mayor.
All right. Any questions for John? Thank you, sir. Fire Station Board. Oh, Linda Knox. Hello, Linda.
As Mayor Evans told us earlier, Forestation has been busy planting trees. And when you plant a tree, the first 2 years of a tree's life are very important because it uses tremendous amounts of energy to build a root system and be happy and strong in its new home. Sometimes they need a little help, sometimes they're just fine on their own. But when you get into the conditions we have been experiencing over the past few weeks with no rain and very intense heat, these trees, it's a big investment. We don't want to lose that. And so at this point, they need our help. City Works does not have the manpower to look after these trees, so we have been talking to outside sources for watering services, and this is something that, some years we haven't needed, other years we don't need it. We'd like to see this be a line item in future budgets, but for the meantime, we need to do something to save the trees. There's 26 trees. We planted roughly, it's about $140 a tree, about $150 to plant. That's $290. So it's roughly $7,500 in trees that we need to look out for if we want to save these in public spaces. So what's it going to cost us right now? We are asking for emergency funds by whichever budget means you all can employ or discretionary funds, but it looks like it will be about $2,900 for Greenscape to come in and do the kind of watering we need. They'll come in with a truck that's fully watered. They'll spend time putting on gallons of water at each location. And that's basically the key of what, Forestation wanted to talk about tonight. We do have some remediation projects that are in the works, either through Public Works or code enforcement. But the key issue is we need water, and we hope you can, show some sympathy for these trees and protect our investment. And, next year it might rain all year and we won't need a drop, but right now we need some. So that's kind of where we are with trees. And
Linda, I took care of that today.
Did you? My hero. Okay. That's all I need to know. Thank you very much.
I'm not trying to shut you down. I just want to let you know.
Well, that is a big relief. I'm very pleased to hear that. And I'm sure everybody in Forestation appreciates your support. And I'm sure it's a big relief to know that city's investment's being protected too.
Linda,
Yeah.
excuse me. Status of the tree right at the top of the hill as you're going to Hunting Creek at Whithill Circle. That one.
The dark colored one,
Yeah, it looks like
it's not happy. We need to have Andrea take a look at it. It was having some issues last year, but it really takes her level of expertise to give us a good answer. But I'll let her know you asked that question.
it's pretty obvious.
It's not
In
happy.
distress, yeah.
And the heat and the lack of water aren't helping. So, and when you get into some of these planting situations where the roots are compromised by, roadways and everything around it, they don't have a natural drip line, so they're not getting as much water as they might need normally.
Thank you.
But I will ask her.
Linda, do you have a process to initiate the watering and stop the watering?
Well, they will do it one tree at a time, and they'll only do it on request.
So do you have to make 26 requests?
No, it would just be a job, and they get a list of the trees and the locations, and that's how they go out into the field. And they've got, the huge truck with the big tank on the back of it, and they will stop and, apply an appropriate amount of water to each location.
So
But who tells them, let's start the process, and who tells them, okay, we've got rain and we no longer need to do that?
They would not take action without somebody from either Forestation contacting them or Andrea Hanlon based on our approving it. And she would give us a heads up when she's seeing signs, because she's out here looking at trees on a regular basis. And one of our Forestation board members is tracking the rain that we get, and she sends out an email to all of us after every event. So we kind of have a sense of when we are getting a fair amount of rain. And for a long time earlier this year, we were getting plenty of rain, but that stopped and the forecast doesn't look very promising.
So the mayor said he found money, and I would imagine it's the emergency fund, because that sounds like a logical use of the
No,
dollars.
actually, I plan to pay for it out of the mayor's discretionary fund, which I never use up.
Which is a good use of that money.
Because the Forestation Board budget is kaput.
But there's also a $10,000 emergency fund, so there's definitely
One
money.
way or another, and it's
But
very
when
easy
will
way
you
to do
start
that.
it?
If we've got to go, I'm sure they'll
Yeah,
be making phone calls in the morning,
That's
getting
always
started right away.
Now, Greenscape's already been contacted.
Perfect. Good news. Anything else?
Meeting with Ron tomorrow. It's to get going.
And just ask
To
her,
work out the details of the process. Because left alone, Greenscape's will keep on doing it.
That will not happen.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
other reports, US 42 safety study update. Imagine that's Tom Springer.
Is very much Mayor, Council. 2021, the city and KIPTA jointly sought funding to advance the US 42 corridor safety study. In October 2021, we entered into a contract with QK4 to manage that. I've been lucky to serve as the project manager on that process. We followed the standard KYTC approved planning process, putting examination of existing conditions, crash data, had 2 public meetings, 2 local official stakeholder meetings, had a website open on your website, a story map. So I know Mr. Carter and Ron Cundiff have done a lot of work on that. At the heart of the planning process are alternatives. We took a hard look at alternatives. Not all of them made the cut. Some of them were thrown to the side, but the ones that we did like, we went and met with KYTC to make sure they could live with them because it's their road and they could. So we went to the public, got public comment and feedback on May 18th. And then in this room on June 2nd, we, the steering committee and we met and went through the information and then prioritized the projects. And then today, as you mentioned earlier, we met with KYTC to make sure that they could live with our prioritization and what they thought of it. And they were very cautious, I think, and ultimately very supportive and on board with your recommendations. And the top recommendation is a series of roundabouts on US 42 at Timber Ridge, Fox Harbor, and River Road. Now, I'll say the public comments either loved or hated them, as we've discussed. The roadway and traffic engineering professionals over the last 10, 12 years or so in Kentucky and Louisville have really grown to support roundabouts because the safety data is indisputable. They're known to reduce crashes at least 80%, and the crashes that do occur are much less severe. And safety is the heart of this planning study and how we got started. So those will be carried forward. And after our meeting today, we have a path forward to get closer toward the next phase, which is design and right-of-way in partnership with the city and KYTC. And we will be presenting a draft plan to the steering committee and KYTC in the next few days, hopefully this week. So in conclusion, honestly, it's been a very fun project for me. I've enjoyed working with the city. I sincerely thank you for picking us and working with us. I wish all my clients were as engaged as you are, and I wish all my project managers were as wonderful as Herb Shelfer here, the man. Thank you very much for your time. That's what I have.
Will you take questions?
I certainly will.
Are there any?
With the amount of traffic on 42, roundabouts and 5 miles, what's going to happen with traffic?
That is what it's all about. The road is about moving traffic safely as well as pedestrians. So what we did is took traffic counts at each of these intersections. We worked with the state and KIPTA, the regional planning agency, and we forecasted those counts, those volumes to the year 2045. Okay, so that's our baseline for studying traffic. And then we developed a model. It's called a VisSim model. It's a visual simulation model that shows how that 2045 traffic operates in the roundabouts. Okay, and the conclusion is that it operates better than signalized intersections. It'll move faster. It'll move smoother, and it'll be less delays. There's overall faster. You're going to reduce your travel time a little bit. But through the roundabouts, you will go a lot slower. It's about 15 miles an hour, but it will progress safely with some
Bob, the
Factor
roundabouts, the roundabouts, the concept is during peak traffic times to increase, to improve the throughput. To get that 20,000 cars through here, excuse me,
Everybody is used to round. Those roundabouts are probably about 300 yards wide. And so traffic moves very slowly. But my concern is 3 roundabouts in addition to traffic lights in such a short period of space. Come early morning, it's kind of 4 o'clock. I'm concerned with clustering happens to that. We already have a lot of that. And is there anybody that's had any roundabout in such a short space?
To answer that question, is yes, Carmel, Indiana has that type of thing, but the signals would be replaced with the roundabouts.
Still have one covered road and then you.
Oh, yes, you still have one at Covered Bridge Road and at Honey, Creek.
Yeah.
But these 3 would be replaced with roundabouts.
I guess I have 2 questions. While I think I have no sort of good idea. My questions are, one, the U.S. highway, why has the federal government not been involved? And number 2, what's the goal of this?
Those are good questions. So by and large, the federal government gives their authority to the state departments of transportation. So the KYTC has been involved, and they, of course, answer to the Federal Highway Administration. So they've been involved indirectly. We have not had any meetings with Federal Highway Administration. That's the sort of how the process works. They don't get involved in planning studies. But one thing the city was very good at, what we did is follow the KYTC process, which FHWA is very familiar with. So that when we come to that meeting, we will have said, KYTC's been involved since the beginning. Okay, and then the cost, the roundabouts are about $8 million, lock, stock, and barrel. That's design, right-of-way, utilities, and the construction.
That's 2 roundabouts.
That's 2 roundabouts. Yes, I have that actually here in my handout. And that's a heavy cost. It's not the cheapest alternative, but it is one that has a good cost benefit ratio to it.
Based on,
On the cost benefit ratio,
what's the rate of
that is the safe. There's a quantitative way to look at safety reduction. And there are dollar values you can assign to that. And there are quantitative ways to look at traffic operations, delays in travel time. And then those numbers are plugged into, actually an FHWA formula, spreadsheet with the cost, and it comes out with the cost benefit analysis. And that also includes traffic volumes. How many people are using it, what's the safety and the travel time benefit versus the cost. So anything over a 1 is good. And here's my list here. We are at cost benefit analysis of 2.8 for these 2 and 2.9 for at River Road.
money comes from?
Well, ultimately, at that cost, you're going to have federal dollars, federal involvement. Federal involvement usually requires some local match. And from the federal government's perspective, the local can be the state, KIPTA, city, anybody that isn't Federal Highway Administration. It's usually an 80-20 match.
Federal was 80.
Yes, yes. And in light of those, just got to ask good questions here. He's that guy. The passage of the infrastructure bill, the state is saying now is the time to go for these big projects. They plan on having quite a bit of money. And what helps projects rise to the top is local involvement, a good planning study to back it up, not just somebody saying we need this, and having thought through the process.
Thank you.
Are those current day dollars?
Yes, they are. And that's a valid question to ask because, we use current day dollars based on current bid prices. And the state keeps a list of bid prices as they come in. So they would reflect some of the inflation that we've experienced.
Tom, there's a question back.
Yes.
I experienced roundabouts have been good for planning or rural areas. I'm really concerned about a 2-lane highway, because highway going through, I can't imagine what station required for that. I'm thinking Timber Ridge Drive. How that handle traffic around those roads, trying to get a lot of to. So do that successfully.
All good questions. We do have maps still on the webpage, on City Dock webpage, and restoring map, and you can zoom in on those plans, and they'll show you the footprint of what those look like. And then there is a video this video I talked about is on the webpage also. And you can watch that and see how it goes. And what you don't get side by side is a comparison of how it works today. But you can see how it would work in the 2045.
So not the draft, but it's.
Good question about the fire department or so. I mean, you want to start, for a 2-lane roundabout like this, you have a modern roundabout design is the language. Okay, it's not the old school circle around the square, in most of our county seats. Okay. And you sort of steer the traffic a little bit to curve and then come into it so that they have better sight distance, and that slows them down on their approach. So that you have the roundabout here, but then you have that strategic curvature to transition the drivers and improve their sight distance. So, I mean, there's some big questions there that are hard to answer.
I did want to add something. I've been fortunate to chair the working group, and we started in October 2019. We learned a great deal. We learned a great deal of how things work, and you can't just take an 80-20 match like that, because we learned it. Matches are all different, and it worked in this case. So what the working group is very diverse, some commercial, some all different neighborhoods, and then as Tom mentioned, the meeting, the public, there'll be more public meetings as time goes on. This is strictly a planning study. But the thing about it, the work group has been very pleased with the concept they got into, creativity of it, and responded to what so many people said we really want good answers. There was a design that got rejected. And I'm glad it got rejected. I wasn't involved in that, but it sure would have made a super highway radio. And it would have done a lot of damage, or it would change things in a long way. So many ways this affects our environment, the right way, basically. These designs say within the right way set in a few areas. And so there is a major roundabout, Juvenile Cardinal, Floyd Avenue, and so that's one example to look at. But I did want to say that it's really a whole lot of thought, a lot of education to it. And It's just coming. the quantity of accidents. Yes. This right here. It's phenomenal. And the traffic is not going to do anything to grow. But the working group feels like you guys have responded to what we asked for. So thank you.
Okay.
Tom,
Possibilities to turn that, has it been considered to make it U-turn?
Yeah.
And then,
Yes.
do that.
So between Timber Ridge and Fox Harbor, there would be a raised concrete median, okay? Except with the left turn bay at Carson. Okay? But if you want to turn left into one of these stores, you go to the roundabout and you circle around and you come back and you turn right. So you have right in and right outs, okay? Which are a lot safer than all the conflict points. And back to your question, we modeled that too. We took cameras, sort of like GoPro cameras, for traffic and set them up here and model a peak day and counted how many cars turned in and out of Starbucks, which is where everybody used to go, apparently. And it's the most popular place. And we added those numbers in to make sure that we considered a worst case scenario. So I'm going to mention real quick the U of L roundabout. We designed that too, okay? Our company did. And I was opposed to it. I was like, this is going to be terrible. All the pedestrians, the students and stuff. 3 years after it was open, we did a crash analysis to compare the last 3 years to 3 years prior, and crashes dropped about 60 or so %. Well, there's still a lot of cars that go through it, but there have been no pedestrian strikes, which I thought was going to be the biggest problem. And it's been overall goals about a U of L. I mean, not everybody.
Tom, I just wanted to say two things. I have an excellent video from the U.S. Highway Department. I'd like to send to John Carter tomorrow. And if anybody would like to see that video, it answers an awful lot of questions about the modern roundabouts as opposed to roundabouts that a lot of us think of. And the second thing, Tom, how can residents, if they weren't able to attend the meetings, how can they find out? There's a website they can go to. How can they get to that, please?
So the best way to go to it, that I usually do, is just look up Prospect City, Google that. Right here on the front page is a link to the study. And then it's called a story map. It's not your typical web page. You just kind of flow through it. Very useful on a mobile device. And you can, see the plans. We're not just the roundabouts. It's all I'll present today because that's the big picture item and the big ticket item. But there's a lot of other concepts too. Left turn lanes and such, and lighting plans.
Did you prioritize the need for the 3 roundabouts?
No, the Fox Harbor and Timber Ridge would need to act as one project. Okay, and then the River Road could act independently. Okay, and that's because of that raised concrete median. So we just prioritized the corridor from Harrods Creek Bridge to River Road. That's our top priority. And that includes lighting and sidewalks and the roundabouts and rebuilding that stretch.
But I guess my question is, if you could only, if the feds only approved 1 instead of 3, which one would be the one you would want?
Well, if they only approved 1, you have to do River Road because these two would want to work together, right? Fox and Timber. So if you had to choose between these two or River Road, I would choose these two. That's the bigger crash area. It's the more, you're addressing more safety issues.
Tom, we've talked a lot about roundabouts and that's great, but there are a lot of other components that go in. Could you just speak from 30,000 feet up, the lighting and the left turns and all those?
Yes, we took a hard look at a lighting concept from Bridgepoint all the way to Hunting Creek. We looked at adding a left turn lane at Bridgepoint, which would be kind of costly, but it would be a great safety benefit. I think it was one of the most popular concepts in the plan as far as public comment. We looked at left turn lanes going up further north into Oldham County and went south into Hunting Creek, left turn lane on Rose Island Road and Greenmere Drive. And then we also looked at a concept about a new back road over here behind this one development and improving connectivity between the developments so everybody doesn't have to get out on 42. That's 3,000 foot. That's high view. High view.
Thank
you. All right. Thank you. Sandra, do we have a library report tonight?
Just a very brief library report. Our sale is over as of today. We'll be packing it up for tomorrow. And we will have another sale in October. We actually raised more money this year for our used book sale than we've ever raised before. Part of that is we had more books to sell because everybody cleaned out their libraries at home during COVID. But we also had way lower prices, and we are going to stick with the lower prices in the future. They're incredibly low. They're so low, people feel guilty if they don't walk out of there with a bag of books. So it's been a very good year for the library.
Thank you. Next is the police report from Assistant Chief Tony Denham.
Yes, sir. I will be brief. With a little kind of an increase in dispatch runs last month coming through. I'll talk about a few things that I talked about last month to go back over it. I'd mentioned last month that we kind of had a little bit of an uptick on calls on homeless folks that had kind of migrated into the community. Louisville has a large contingent of homeless. We have a ton of services that go downtown. Sometimes for different reasons, folks migrate out this way from time to time. We have great citizens. If somebody doesn't look like they belong in the community, they pick up the phone and call. So we could have at an uptick. No increase in anything other than going on. Most of the time, they're actually just passing through. They're not, there's no other reason. But they do tend to walk along this corridor, talking about sidewalks. They walk along through here and they're passing through to go up north. So they are right next to the road. We immediately get calls on that. But we've had no issues, anybody with anything going on like that. Another thing I want to talk about is just kind of a PSA. We've had a couple instances of, a lot of people if you go back in our neighborhoods, which we're in the neighborhoods a lot, folks have a lot of contractors in the neighborhoods working on a lot of different things. One PSA I would tell you is find out who you're hiring and who works for those people. We've had a couple instances, no danger whatsoever, but just some alarming instances of folks that are working for those contractors overdose while they're on someone's property. There's a huge heroin issue in Louisville, and that doesn't just stay contained in that area. But we've had an instance, I think 2 times over in Sutherland, where we've had instances where we're getting runs because someone who's working at a home has taken, something, the substance when they're there, and then had an overdose because it's very easy to hide. But just a heads up to say, hey, know who's coming to your house and know who's going to be working. And if you have any issues, pick up the phone and call us. We'll be over immediately. But those are things where no one was injured. Nobody did anything wrong. It was just something I want you guys to definitely be aware of, to make sure you know who's coming into your house to work. Last meeting, I talked about a catalytic converter that was stolen right over here in broad daylight. Don't know the whole issue with it, but right here at Islands Cleaners. And that's not easy to get under a car in broad daylight, nobody see it. So we don't know exactly what happened, but we've kept an eye on it. There's never been another instance of it, and nobody around our jurisdiction, we check with their detectives, has had any issues. So I don't know exactly what happened on that, but we've had no other instances of that at all. One thing we had up on Riding Ridge that happened up there, we got a call on a break-in. And sometimes these things get on the Nextdoor app, they really increase in craziness by the time we find out about it. And really, it's not even exactly what happened. I know that's hard to believe on the Nextdoor app, but there was a person who was doing an appraisal. They got mixed up, went to the wrong property. The lady called from out of town and said, hey, I'm not home. There's somebody looking in my house, knocking on the doorbell. So just something like that. But if you ever see the Nextdoor app and you have a question, for goodness sakes, please call us, because that can really turn into something that it's not. So if you ever have a question, you please call us. We will answer and give you any information we have. One last thing, this is also somewhat of a PSA. The only kind of little bit crazy incident we had last month was up at the Kroger. 2 girlfriends were meeting. One had a doctor's appointment. The other was going to babysit the kids while she went to the doctor. They parked right up next, kind of by the Kroger up there. One in one row, one in another row, gets the kiddos out, goes to put them in the friend's car, left the other car running. As it happens, just by happenstance, if you provide an opportunity for someone, they're going to take it. Guy jumps in the car, takes off out of the lot. She took off on foot, which is not a good idea. But a good Samaritan hops up next to her, puts her in the car, says, hey, we'll follow them. They did a great job. Followed them all the way up to Kroger at Holiday Manor. Our officers in Indian Hills were able to catch the guy after he bailed out of the car. But PSA, don't leave your car running ever and jump out and do anything. It only takes that brief, probably 20 seconds that she thought she could put the kids in the car and be right back over. That's all it took, because that's all it took for him to get in. But good ending. Guy went to jail, and she did have some damage to her vehicle, but that was about it. Any questions you guys have at all? Yes, sir.
need security cameras? City,
The city itself does not, the city itself does not use those, but the neighborhoods have those, and they are valuable, and I mean very valuable. I know, Honey Creek just had some put in that are excellent. We've been using them, kind of testing them and going through. Sutherland's, has some as well. We've had a few instances off and on where that's a huge help because we can determine where, because you can't get out or in, the Sutherland's without being on camera and being on camera for your license plate. So those things, besides people calling, those things are valuable. But we do have 2 neighborhoods where we use those. And the one that we use in, Honey Creek, it's attached to a database at other places, and it's wonderful.
That's Tony, that's Hunting Creek Estates.
Estates, yes, sir. That's exactly it. And it works fabulous.
Tony, could I piggyback on that just a little bit?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I don't know if you're asking because you're with an HOA, but about a year ago, Mayor Evans held a HOA forum. And one of the topics on the agenda was that very thing, security cameras. So I'm pretty sure there, I might even have it myself. There's information on, not all cameras are good. Some take better pictures than
Yes,
others. And
It's a
so
big difference.
I remember that being one of the
Yeah.
main things that came out of that. So if you're interested in that, probably, Mayor, if you have it, or if you don't, I might have that information if you're interested.
thanks, Greg, but my primary interest was from the city and my interested standpoint along the US 44.
Right.
We do not.
From a traffic standpoint,
Sure.
most of the activity is, I mean, I recently experienced somebody sideswiping her car in the shopping center parking lot. Those security cameras in that parking lot, it's right on 42.
Right.
Made them that may have been able to have seen
Absolutely.
the perpetrator.
It's something we could certainly entertain someday. They're very expensive to do that.
Yes.
Well, and some businesses do have them. And there
They
actually
do.
are 2 in the city. There are 2 up in the library. They're not
Yes.
attached to a database, but there are cameras. More are available than the good ones that he's talking about.
Because we speak on the rent circuit. It's a $2,500 a year rent, but the company that provides it is 100% responsible for the maintenance, replacement, the upgrades. So it really isn't that expensive when you look at the 2 entrances. We have another mechanic set off on a bridge road. Next year, going to separate each other. So it's $5,000 a year. That's it.
For 2 cameras.
Tony,
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. You mentioned, I forgot, you mentioned a drug that there's a problem with. It wasn't fentanyl, was it?
Heroin. Yeah.
Heroin.
Yeah.
Um,
Which can have fentanyl in it.
Okay, is there something going on in this city with fentanyl? And what I've heard is that there's some bad fentanyl out there that's being maybe.
Yeah,
spread
there's-
out.
Yeah, it'll kill you.
Yeah. but I mean,
Any
there's
fentanyl.
Insulation something too.
Yeah, I've not seen any out here because anytime we have anything that comes in this way, it's always somebody who's not a resident, who's coming here, like I said, to work
Going through.
or is passing, like we had a motorist who was passed out at the Kroger pumps the other day. But there's a serious heroin problem, not out here, but sometimes they do come. Sometimes.
All right, thank you, Tony.
Yes, sir.
We'll now move on to unfinished business, the first of which is to have a second reading of the ordinance that establishes the budget for the municipal aid fund. Would someone like to make a motion to have that second reading?
I
Does
move.
this mean the municipal road aid fund? Are we missing a word?
It is missing a word
Municipal road aid.
on the agenda.
Municipal road aid.
Yeah, it's the agenda.
Well, the document's all right.
Yeah, it is. It is.
What's missing?
The agenda.
Municipal aid and municipal road aid.
Oh,
Municipal aid.
I
Yeah,
move
Ms.
that
Brown,
we have a
yeah.
second reading.
okay. Any second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll ask for a vote.
Do we have to read it?
No.
Don't we have to read it?
No.
Not the second.
No, that's it.
Second. Let's go backwards. Let's ask Councilman Farnsworth. How do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mr. Fulcher,
Yes.
Mr. Gilsman,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mrs. Leonard.
Yes.
That's everybody. So it passes unanimously. So that's done. Next on the agenda is second reading of the ordinance establishing the ad valorem tax rate for the coming fiscal year.
I move we have a second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Only that we need to realize that people read our agenda. And while these may meet the legal requirements for a title to what we're going to do, we're not giving information. And I think in instances like this, it would be a good idea for us to include more words so that people reading the agenda know what we're going to be voting on. Because this one could be a tax increase, it could be almost anything, and they have no way of knowing that.
Well, it's very important for people to know that we've reduces
Exactly,
the mill rate
exactly.
substantially. So your point.
And yet I got phone calls, 2 of them, that said, oh my God, what are you doing? And so we need to concentrate about giving a little more information.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll ask for a vote. Frank?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Sandra?
Yes,
And Doug?
Yes.
Unanimous. So that passes. And then we have up for a first reading, an ordinance which enacts the 2021 supplement to the Code of Ordinances. Anyone want to make a motion for a first reading?
I move. So
Second.
moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
again, this was another area where people said, what does that mean? And this is a very routine process. It's a very routine procedure. We do something every year so that our ordinances are codified and become a part of the entire ordinance book. And again, an additional sentence that says what we're voting on. I think we really need to concentrate on doing that more effectively.
All right. Any other discussion? Yeah, somebody needs, well, first they need to agree that they want a first reading. They voted on that.
Well, we don't have to vote to do that.
Remember, your all's policy is to vote to bring it up for first reading. You don't
Right.
have to, but that's what you've done.
That's what we've done.
So, Sandra, you want to have a first reading?
Certainly.
Don? Greg?
Oh, you may do the first reading? Sure.
No, do you want to have it?
Oh,
Vote to vote.
Yes or no?
oh, to vote for it. Well, let's just do it. That way we know.
Yes.
Oh, that's a yes.
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
All right. Somebody want to give it a first reading?
I'll do that.
Okay, Frank.
The City of Prospect Ordinance Number 619, Series 2022. An ordinance enacting and adopting the 2021 supplement to the Code of Ordinances of the City of Prospect.
Thank you. All right, that completes our agenda except for comments from citizens. Are there any citizens who wish to comment? See a hand go up. I see two.
Shit, get out of here. All need to go to. Keep going. Have any of those things, the ethics?
Yes, I'm Jacqueline McGrail and I live on Rockingham Road. I'm here to talk again about my case with the Codes Enforcement Board and to protest about what's been happening. The Code Enforcement Board was appointed by you, the council and the mayor, and not elected. There's no oversight of their operation as illustrated by the debacle of my case. I find it particularly ironic that the chair of the CEB is in public relations, as she has brought a lot of bad PR to Prospect. None of the CEB members has any training in horticulture, garden design, or ecology, and their rulings in my case illustrate both their ignorance and their arrogance. The mayor and the council are the elected city government, and I feel strongly that you all are responsible for cleaning up this mess. There are a couple of ways I can, well, before I do that, let me just mention that cities, counties, and states all across this country are enacting laws protecting the right to garden, requiring the planting of native plants on public properties, outlawing garden pesticides and gas-powered lawn equipment, and even paying homeowners to replace their lawns with pollinator plants. In Prospect, on the other hand, you're persecuting gardeners who want to work hard to support butterflies, bees, fireflies, and songbirds and our native wildlife through their gardens. It seems like too many people in Prospects are grassaholics. They seem to think that grass is a good thing, but grass is an ecological wasteland or even very destructive to native pollinators and other wildlife. So instead of moving forward, Prospect wants to stay in the past. And this just doesn't make sense, and it's not going to be able to last even if you don't do anything about it today or tomorrow. So I suggest that there are a couple of things you can do to end this issue. One is to simply drop Prospect's opposition to my appeal in district court. You're not obligated to defend the CEB's arbitrary and capricious rulings by hiring lawyers and going to court. You can just not answer my appeal. Save a lot of taxpayer money that you're otherwise wasting. The other thing you can do is to change the Prospect codes by explicitly allowing front yard gardens with appropriate setbacks. Louisville Metro's new weed codes allow gardens of any size on any part of a resident's property with setbacks from streets, sidewalks, and property lines, plus a few other requirements such as cutting back herbaceous plants once a year and posting educational signage about habitat gardens. I was told I had to remove my educational signs from my property, that it's a violation of the Prospect sign ordinance. So first, you don't want me to do what's good for the environment, and second, you don't want me to educate people. This makes absolutely no sense. I think that the city council really needs to rein in the loose cannon that is the present code enforcement board. Thank you.
All right, any other citizen comment? I think there was one. Mrs. Shelby, is that right? Please come out.
Thank you for allowing us to speak today. I'm Ann Shelby and my husband, John. We live in the Woodlands, condominiums in the Landings. And I think first I'm just going to read my email that I've sent you all so it can be part of the public record, I understand. We consider ourselves fortunate to be Prospect residents of the Woodlands condos and the Landings. We enjoy the small town conveniences and we especially enjoy our peaceful and lush environment. We walk daily along Timber Ridge Drive and visit Putney Pond. Putney Pond truly is the best kept secret of Prospect with all its wildlife. We never know what we will see in our daily visit. Great white egret, blue heron, black-crowned night heron, turtles, ducks, geese, and occasionally a bald eagle. Fishermen, photographers, plein air painters, birders, and walkers like ourselves enjoy this natural habitat just off Highway 42. We are not only residents enjoying the neighborhood, many residents of the Landings enjoy a daily walk on Timber Ridge Drive. It is a busy road as well, and the sidewalks are an important part of safety for walkers. Unfortunately, over the years, they are buckling from tree roots. Uneven pavement creates water pooling and mud accumulation, which can easily cause tripping and slipping. Often it is easier to walk in the road when the sidewalk is impassable, and there are often cars or trucks parked in the street, which require walking around them as well. And of course, nobody drives the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. The other issue we notice on our daily walks is the deterioration of the stone wall on the hill on Timber Ridge Drive, just beyond Putney Lane. The wall appears to be man-made of large stone boulders. Up until recently, it was heavily covered with vegetation. However, the green vegetation is now mostly dead, exposing the wall. It's not a pretty sight, but more importantly, we fear the wall will eventually give way, causing a mudslide and collapsing of the hillside. The only direction for it to go would be into Timber Ridge Drive, which is the only road access into the landings. And I've got a photograph, I sent you all photographs, and I just brought one to show. So I understand this has already been looked at, and I really, really appreciate that. I know Ron had kind of has been a part of that. So I do ask for you to take care of the stone wall and also to allocate funds to repair the sidewalks in the future. Over time, if left untouched, these issues would truly become not just an eyesore and an annoyance, but a hazard, and jeopardize our daily living in the landings and beautiful Prospect. And I'm gonna allow my husband to continue.
Good evening. I'm John Shelby, the husband of Ann, whom you just heard present those observations and concerns. As some of you may know, I'm retired as a surgical subspecialist as well as a retired naval officer. During my 27 years as an officer in the Navy and 40-year medical career, I've made innumerable assessments of risk regarding human interaction with both trauma and disease. Some of my comments specifically focus on that section of the sidewalk Ann just mentioned as it descends on the hill next to Timber Ridge. I want to make the following points. This is the steepest part of the sidewalk, but is the only pedestrian access, as Ann mentioned, for residents of the landings when walking or jogging towards Putney Pond and US Highway 42. 2, there is no safe alternative to walk in the street, as the road at that point takes a steep curve downward with the line of sight impaired for drivers coming down the hill. Number 3, during and after rain or snow events, mud, leaves, dirt, stones, and other detritus cover the walk, making walking or jogging hazardous in regards to slipping and falling. Number 4, the number of mud and dirt slides have certainly increased since the defoliation of the walls and hillside above the wall by chemicals applied to eradicate poison ivy, oak, and sumac. They also eradicated the non-poisonous plants that were holding the soil behind and above the wall. Number 5, throughout the rest of the landings are other sidewalks that are uneven, partially covered by mud or dirt due to tree root and soil settlement. Many of our residents are forced to walk on the streets due to the tilt and unevenness of the walkways. Information that I obtained freely over the internet from the American Journal of Public Health and other sources are as follows. A, falls that occurred outdoors more often than indoor among nearly all age groups of adults. Quote, number B, most outdoor falls, about 73% of them, were precipitated by environmental factors such as uneven surfaces, tripping, or slipping on objects, usually occurring on sidewalks, curbs, and streets. C, walking, no surprise here, was the most common fall-related activity, over almost 50%. D, falls are the leading cause of injury-related deaths and hospital admissions among older adults. And older adults in this article and reference are defined as anyone over the age of 45. Fall-related injuries in the United States in 2019 cost $50 billion related to insurance claims dealing with those falls. We are in favor of using funds reserved for infrastructure repair and maintenance to be applied toward controlling erosion of soil or rock on the sidewalk surfaces and to repair broken and uneven sidewalk and maintain these sidewalks for the safety of all residents of Prospect. And thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Doctor.
John, can I ask a question? Sure. Doctor, has the HOA been responsive at all to any of these issues? And do they uphold the restrictions that you all have for, I don't know what they are, but for your houses and?
So technically, since I live in the Woodlands, which is the condominiums adjacent to, we're not privy necessarily to the Landings HOA meetings or their actions per se. So as you may know, we don't have any significant number of sidewalks. However, the sidewalks that are there for the general public to exit Putnam Pond are in general open to all of us who share that neighborhood. So I am not privy to their specific rules or regulations regarding that. Any other questions?
Yeah, I understand the Landings has an HOA that applies and is made up only of the homes which are in the quote estates of the Landings.
Which don't have fire.
Anybody who's outside the estates of the Landings doesn't have an HOA. Is that right?
So the entire homeowners association of the Woodlands has its own HOA.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. So the Landings has its own HOA. Now, I don't know about the division between estates and non-estates section.
I don't, but I can tell you that there's no sidewalks in the estate section.
And the roadways are significantly wider. I'm not sure how much wider. It seems like 30% wider than the roads that are in that non-state section, at least on visual.
But the Woodlands has its HOA.
Right.
Yes, we have our own HOA for the 76 units.
It's a condominium association.
It is a condominium.
That's distinctly different.
It is different. It is very different. But the parts we're talking about today are the general public accessible areas where the sidewalks are. And everybody in that whole area of the Landings, whether they're condominium or they're state or what have you, walk the sidewalks, walk the streets, the estates.
Have we looked, excuse me, have we looked at Logic or anything to find out whose land these things are on?
Are you talking about the hillside?
Mhm.
It looks like in the mapping that it belongs to the park. I mean, it looks like private land ends and it's part of the City of Prospect Park system.
Could be. Thank you.
And I know the Greenscapes maintains that usually, that's usually the thing.
I think it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am?
This is just personal opinion, and I've lived out here since the late
Would
90s.
you state your name, please?
It's Nisa Hudgens, and I'm a licensed realtor, and I've lived in this area since 97, 98. When I heard what they're doing to Jacqueline, I'm ashamed and embarrassed of this community. They have started a GoFundMe account because somebody's decided to complain after all those years of that yard. I have sold in Prospect and Goshen for 23 years, and the bulk of the complaints that I get are Hunting Hills condominium that they don't even take care of the outside facade. And then has anyone ever rode around City of Prospect and looked at the other houses? And we all know Rick Jeffries' house on Montero has never been addressed. It has, and then he sued the city and won because someone took pictures and that junk is still there. People see mice and snakes. That's a bigger eyesore than her front yard. I'm shocked that she's being singled out. And I have got a list of homes that either have they allowed their vegetation to go crazy. It's never been addressed. There's one gentleman, he must be elderly. There's been a tree that's laid down in between 2 yards and vines and stuff had grown up. I don't know if these people have bad taste. They don't want to take care of their home. But if we're going to single somebody out and we're going to start getting under HOA rules and more of a dictatorship, how people have to maintain their houses, then you better start going from house to house. Because I'll be glad to give you the 12 houses that I have wrote down where people have no landscape. The windows have started to rot out. Shutters that are missing, fences that are laying down. There's so many that I'm shocked that she has been singled out when you've got an entire problem throughout the community. So that's my personal opinion.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Hearing none, I look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
People there and the audience.